you've seen some of our talks. What you're going to do is just kind of, you have the open floor. Tell us a little bit about yourself, how you came to know Nos, and then I will just throw out questions that kind of pop up.
Okay, fantastic. My name is Carol Tatom, and I joined NOHS as a student with Southern New Hampshire University. My major is human services with a concentration in child and family services, and I just recently graduated, so I'm really excited to be done with that. And I got into this field just being an autism parent and working in the industry, helping special needs families. I wanted to help strengthen the advocacy skills that I have and stay connected with other agencies and nonprofits that I would be able to use to help benefit the families that I serve.
So your daughter has autism. Is that...
Yes.
That was kind of like the leading point into this advocacy work. Tell me a little bit about what brought you into it wholeheartedly. But there's considering it phase, and then there's I'm jumping into it phase. So what was that for you?
Right. So as for me, like when we first received her diagnosis, I really struggled as a parent trying to find resources for her. And then there was the additional fight that once you finally found resources or services that would help, insurance may not have covered it, or, insurance didn't want to cover it, or there were high insurance copays that really limited the available services that families were able to use to help improve the quality of the lives of their children. And then the advocacy work I got into, just thinking ahead, all of us are connected by the unified fear of, what will happen to our children when we grow old and we're too old to advocate for them and to take care of them. What will happen to them?
So you ran into a lot of the hardships that come with trying to find services. And so at that point, did you meet a lot of families right off the bat that were kind of in the same boat as you, trying to find resources and couldn't? Or was that like a slow introduction to this family network?
I would meet a lot of families like in various therapy settings that were also struggling, or they were doing, speech instead of OT, or they were doing OT instead of physical therapy because they couldn't do all of them because of insurance, And then like when my daughter was first diagnosed, ABA therapy, which is the gold standard for children with autism, was considered experimental therapy. And even though I had good private insurance at that time, it didn't cover it. So we weren't able to utilize those services that are now considered the gold standard.
The experimental therapy? What? And so was this in this century?
Yes,
Yeah, right?
She's 12 now. So she was diagnosed at 18 months. All her pediatricians, you need to do ABA, if you're going to help improve some of these symptoms, but insurance wouldn't cover it. So that, I guess, started a lot of the advocacy work that I did, getting in touch with other people in the community to see, what they did, what worked, and what other resources were out there if we weren't going to go down that path, what else was available.
Right. So obviously you're advocating for your daughter daily, and you've been doing that, since day one. What other ways do you find yourself either day to day or just week to week, however it kind of fits into your life, advocating for not only your family, but for the other families that you've met?
Yeah. So I work at an ABA clinic. I'm the Director of Operations at Life Skills Autism Academy in Fairview, Texas. So we have a bunch of families. They're all full-time families with us that I get to work with and help make sure that they're getting not just the ABA services with us, but if they need speech, OT or PT, helping connect them to those other services that would benefit them. And then when they outgrow us, we're able to work with Centria Autism to make sure that they're able to have that the continuity of care when they leave us.
So you work with the network, especially when finding other resources outside of, I guess, your home base kind of provisions. That's awesome.
Yes, and it's so necessary because there's more than just clinical needs that families have.
Yeah, can you kind of dive into that a little bit? Kind of other things that people might not consider because they don't have a family or someone autistic in their family, or they just never been around that kind of advocacy? Like, what are some of the things that maybe other people might take for granted?
Right. I know isolation is one of, I guess, the biggest thing that I know a lot of families struggle with, because if their child has challenging behaviors, they're not going out and doing regular activities. Like going out to eat might be a real struggle, or going to a movie might be a real struggle. So collaborating with other, community partners, it was neat to learn that there's some of our local movie theaters that have sensory friendly weekends where you can go and just, feel like a regular family and not have to worry about if your child's behavior is, disrupting other people.
Yep. Nope. That's definitely something. I wrote that down. That's definitely something that people will easily take for granted, is just the accessibility to like the things they do daily that are just not really that friendly to everybody in the community. So what do you find yourself working within a network, or just having like a pre-established network of people, or is it so much that you have the ability to talk to, I don't know, let's say there's a resource across the state, or maybe it's more like a government issue kind of resource. Do you find that it's easy or hard to kind of communicate to folks outside of your network to find things that y'all might need?
I think it's easy to network, and I do network with other people, not just our local DFW area, because it's necessary, just in other people in other regions might know of other resources that you haven't discovered yet, or they may know somebody, personally, or like a lot of people do like consulting on the side. They might know someone that has resources to share. And a lot of like the nonprofits are at the national level. So it's always great to collaborate with them and then find out who's working the local chapter in your region. But it also gives us a bigger broad set of, if somebody calls and they're not local to here, I'm still able to help them. I'm able to connect them to someone with the local chapter for where they are from the national organization that I've collaborated with.
Yeah. So does that happen? Because I can imagine some people maybe, especially in Texas, like kind of calling or connecting with y'all in a way that, maybe they found you on the internet, or they were
Yes.
referred to you. And then you're like, well, we're not really in your neighborhood, but we know people who are. Does that kind of thing
Yes.
occur?
It does, because I'm on a lot of like the autism parent sites. I do volunteer work like with Autism Speaks, and I'm on all of the like the Autism Society sites as well. So I've gotten calls from a lot of different states. The furthest away, I've gotten someone contacting me from England, wanting to know services. They had read an article that was published in Autism Parenting magazine. So I was able to help them still, even though I'm not over there. But I was
That's
able to
really
give them
cool.
some good resources.
That is so cool. More power to you, especially when you don't. I mean, I personally, and I do this with the podcast too, like you don't, you do an article or you put your name out there, or you just sharing your story basically, right? And then you don't even realize that it's reaching halfway around the world. It's hard to conceptualize that, but it's telling of like the nature of the help that you provide, right?
Yes.
What are some of the challenges? I know previously we kind of had a lull about insurance and just the process of healthcare in general, and that in trying to find resources and stuff. Tell me about your experience with regards to, dealing with healthcare.
Yeah, insurance is probably one of the most challenging things for our families. And I know in Texas, Medicaid is new for like ABA coverage. Not a lot of clinics accept it, and the process is much harder in Texas for the ABA clinics to be able to accept Medicaid. So that impacts a lot of our families that really rely on that, insurance coverage to get their services, because paying for them out of pocket is just not an option. I know other states like Arizona, California, New Jersey, they're very Medicaid friendly. So families in those areas are able to get services a lot easier with their Medicaid insurance than they are here in Texas.
So it's just because this is a state by state basis kind of run deal when it comes down to.
Yes.
I'm already feeling annoyed for you. Please, please go on. So tell me, what are, I guess, Do you find yourself advocating also as well for the accessibility of healthcare in Texas specifically because of the just difficulty in the process, or is that something you kind of have to, I guess, do from a ground level? Like, how do you get involved with trying to make that process easier, not just trying to get families through it? I mean, do you find yourself working in that regard?
I'm helping to connect families with services or helping them with their insurance challenges.
Insurance challenges as well, yeah. And I guess also changing and advocating for changes to the process.
Yeah, so I've contacted like the local like government, the congressman, and they explained to me that the funding for state coverage like Medicaid comes at the federal level, and then the governor gets to decide how much he wants to allocate. So I write a lot of letters, send a lot of emails. So it's getting better. I feel like each year it's a little bit better, but we're not quite there yet. We're kind of behind all the other states.
Yeah, it's funny to me, not a very cool way, but just it's silly, I guess, is a better way of saying that. You were told that it comes from a federal level. Okay, cool. So that's quite large scope, but the governor gets to decide where it goes, and so it's one person, right? And one person, or at least a small body of people, right? And you're in the home state of Texas. Yet, you can't just take your governor to tea or breakfast and have this conversation. Like, for some reason, that process remains tricky to change for the better because of just like a small pocket of decision makers. It's just
right. And there's a lot of,
go ahead.
Texas is a big state, so we have a lot of public health issues as well. And I know for the autism community, unless you're personally touched by it, it probably is not on other people's radar because we're one of the smaller populations, but we're definitely growing. I know the CDC just recently released, I think it was last week, that we're now 1 out of every 36 children in the United States. It was 1 out of every 44 when we last spoke. So the numbers are growing. The numbers of people impacted are growing. So the funding definitely needs to be increased to meet that demand.
Absolutely. And so when you are working with other families, what is it that you bond on, I guess, maybe strongest? Is it the struggle aspect? Is it the experience in itself? Is it stories? Is it all of it? I mean, what really brings and keeps you close to other families, that are working through the challenges of autism?
For me, just being an autism parent, that helps create that bond when families call and they tour. It helps build trust. It's something relatable. They love hearing that, that my daughter's 12 because at the clinic I'm at, we service ages 2 to 6. So they always like to know how will it be like when they're older. So I'm able to help with a little bit. And then when I meet, other families that have older kids, like teens, early 20s, I'm asking them the same questions. How's it going to be? How are they? Or, can they drive? Are they able to live by themselves? Because those are the challenges that we'll be going through, as my daughter gets older. But I love that. I've been down, the early childhood part of it already. So I feel very well versed in it and helping our new families that have, that just received that new diagnosis, work through those emotions and everything that encompasses that, making sure that they're trying to take that stress away from them so that they're able to get what they need to get on the right path for them.
Yeah, I'm picturing the family tree in my head, and I can see how those bonds remain so tight because of age, just age alone, right? You have parents who can help and mentor with you and advocate with you and, give you guidance, while yes, you also helping someone who's not quite reached, the same age, right? Like the different phases, there's always somebody in front and behind kind of thing in support. And that's beautiful. I think that's probably something other people not necessarily take for granted, but just they're oblivious to, maybe because they don't understand the experience or that's not how they find their social network. But I mean,
right.
It is beautiful.
Yeah, when we received our first autism diagnosis, I remember feeling very alone. I didn't know any other autism families. I didn't really know much about it. I didn't know how to get any resources. I didn't know how to advocate for any resources. I really felt like I was all alone in this process. So I hope like the work that I do just helps promote what's out there and kind of paves the road. So, when the next family gets a new diagnosis and they're like, what do we do? Like, just follow the path. I've created it for you. I've got little handlebars there just to help guide you on your way. And, there's, always somebody, there, me, to help. And I do make myself accessible to our families even after business hours, because I know so many of them, the only time they have to kind of sort through paperwork or questions is, after work or after they've put their child to bed. And I know a lot of our families have been very thankful to be able to get in touch with someone who understands where they've been and understands their concerns, not just because it's their job, but because they've lived through it.
Yeah, that's an exceptional, beautiful example of what it means to kind of be and become the thing that you're advocating for, you stand for, you work for in human services, right? I mean, it's usually we all get here from an experience. We get into this field interested in doing the work from an experience, but it's you've embodied the ability to just say, okay, like the success in this is the ability to share our experience, because we do need each other in that regard. It can't just be, I'm assuming the majority of advocates in the realm of autism are parents. Would that be,
Yes.
is that, can I, okay.
Yes.
I think I can make
Yes.
that assumption.
And it's a very passionate group because we're all personally touched by it. It's just not something we feel like world peace. We should all have world peace, and that's a great thing. But when it's, like the autism, the daily challenges, it's every day. It's every day. So it is something that, it personally just, grabs you by the heart, and you're like, you just can't stop because our kids' future is at stake, so I think that's the driving force. It's, get all of this advocacy work done so that when I'm too old to care for myself, I know that I can sit back and know they're going to be okay. She's going to be okay. All of our families, they're all going to be okay.
Yeah, you're highlighting something that I find powerful and intriguing in the sense that you are not, the work that you're doing, the advocacy is not separate from your life. It's you're doing the work and learning and supporting whilst living, literally the embodiment of the things that you need change or support with. Like, it's not just your life isn't separate from the things that you're advocating for, which I think is beautiful. And I want to know a little bit more about, after you received your daughter's diagnosis, what was the first thing you did?
I think I cried. It was probably the first thing I did. It's like you go through, I think all families that go through like those 7 stages of grieving, not so much that you're grieving like the loss of a child, but the loss of what you thought their life would be like, knowing that they're going to have so many challenges in life. And you go from like when your baby's first born and you're like this perfect, amazing baby. Are they going to find the cure for cancer, win the Nobel Prize in medicine, save the world? What does their future hold? And then, when you get that autism diagnosis, I'm like, okay, will they be able to independently live on their own someday? So it definitely changes, I guess the expectations that you had, but it also puts that element of fear, because what if they can't live by themselves? We're not going to live forever. We won't be around forever to take care of them for their lifespan. So we have to have something in place, to help fill, that need so that we know that they're going to be okay in the end.
Yeah. Do you work a lot with parents in finding, I guess, personal therapy, marriage counseling, things that are kind of in line with taking care of the parent well-being?
Yeah, we do have a lot of resources. There is. And it's kind of one of those, a lot of times, I guess it's not always spoken of, but I know as an autism parent, those things are there. And I know I've written a lot of research on the divorce rates in autism families are 60% higher than, regular families, and it's often due to the behavior challenges, loss of employment, because of the therapy needs of the child or not being able to find daycare. so that you can go work outside the home, so that you have a financial strain added into that. And it is hard trying to find a specialist, even if you went to counseling, trying to find a specialist that understands the personal challenges of autism and how it impacts the family unit. I know it impacts, siblings. I know my older kids never wanted to have a play date, at the house because, my daughter, she was kind of unpredictable in her behavior. Or when she was younger, she may take her clothes off and run around the house and think it's funny. And, siblings are mortified. So it's definitely impacts, even like going to like Six Flags for, a family fun day. She wasn't able to do all of the rides. And if there's too many people, which there's always too many people at those kinds of places, and it's always too noisy, it's not fun for her. She might have behaviors, and we don't get to stay as long. So then the older, siblings, kind of put that blame on her. It's your fault. We have to leave early. So, I know that she feels excluded a lot from things, but I did help create a family resource area at our clinic. We're hoping to build that out at our other clinic locations as well, to have those additional services. So if they need counseling or, other types of therapy, that information is there. And when parents come into our clinics, they can grab what they need and use those resources to help them.
I have a thought experiment for you, and I'm curious to see what kind of world you hope is there to create. And that is, would you prefer being able to go any day to Six Flags and, I guess, not feel intimidated or limited, or that any of these things are too much or overwhelming for your family? Or would you like to see more opportunities for the days to be where it's just, kids with autism go to the park and it's closed off to the rest of the public? I mean, what kind of inclusion or change in perspective do you feel the world needs to have? Is it one where everyone's involved and considerate and everything's accessible? Or is that where we can kind of accommodate, whether it be a day at the park once a month for kids with autism, or in another day, you know what I'm saying? Like, what kind of world do you perceive would be best to live in,
Right. It would be hard to find the perfect solution for each family because the individual needs would be different. But Six Flags has been very good about a lot of families don't know this, but if you go to their guest services and tell them that your child has autism, you have to bring a doctor's note that's signed saying that your child has autism. They will give you a special pass that allows you to cut to the front of the line so that you're not having to wait. And we did that one time, which was great because people with autism don't do well waiting in line. However, the backlash from all of the other customers that we had to move in front of, who were standing in line for hours, were not very happy. They were shouting things at her. You don't look like you have a disability. And of course that just triggered behavior. She's like, shut up, people, shut up. And I'm like, Bayla, it's okay. It's okay. So I know that she felt bad, she was given, the accommodation to not have to wait in line. But then because of the backlash of the other people that were there, she didn't like to have to use it. But then she couldn't wait in line either. So she spent a lot of time on the bench, waiting for her siblings to ride the rides.
Yeah.
So it's like, we're getting there. I mean, it's definitely something they didn't offer, 10, 20 years ago. So we're making progress. It's just slow.
Yeah, it's really reflective of a change that has to happen from different ends, right? People just need to check themselves, get over the stigmas and the upset. I mean, I know you've been waiting in line, but good grief. Like, I think more people they could be kinder about, even if, we told everyone that ever went to Six Flags from here on out, like, hey, here's an accommodation you might see be given to somebody. Don't be mean about it.
Right.
There's just the stigma and that. People just being kinder, but then there's also like the accommodation side, which is very cool. I did not know that about Six Flags, and I'm sure there's tons of other places that have, I guess, go to the front desk kind of assistance. But like, how do you go about knowing? Like, how did you know that?
They were one of the supporters for an Autism Speaks event. So I learned through my outreach work that they offer those services. So I did not know that before. So it's another benefit of collaborating with other, providers, in the area, because you're able to learn about resources that you might not have known were there.
Yeah,
And Chuck E. Cheese is another provider, a really big supporter of the autism community. And I think once a month they have a sensory friendly, either Saturday or Sunday, where, they turn all the noise and lights off of the machines, and the lights are dimmed a little so that your child can go in and they don't have to worry about the noise from the arcade games that are in there. They can just play and have fun.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess it's going to not be as well known because unless you're looking for it, you're not going to see it's there or know it happens. But that collaboration with Six Flags, all it took is somebody reaching out and starting the conversation. And I want to highlight that because human services can remain so siloed, right? Like nonprofits sticking to their thing. And this is why I love that you have built such a beautiful network. One, you had to, right? It was necessary. But two, it's maintaining that and understanding, what is our priority here? It's not to remain in our corners. It's to help our families need something, if we don't have it, we need to call, Mario here and be like, hey, let's coordinate. And I don't know why that's so hard for people. I think maybe there's a demand factor. And I don't mean people in general, I just specifically in the field. Like maybe the just demand for the connection and that networking has to really be there for it to be an effort made.
Right. And a lot of people, they're just tired. Like I know I've spoken. It was one of the things I like about the autism community too. It doesn't matter what race you are, what religion you are, what political party you affiliate with. We're all kind of equal in this, in the autism community, that we're just trying to get through the day. We're trying to get through tomorrow. We're trying to get through this week. We're trying to get through this year. And so we, collaborate and work with each other, supporting each other, trying to get that done. So a lot of the, the advocacy work, a lot of families, if they have children with, extreme behavior challenges, they don't have the time. They're exhausted. So that's why we work together. And, if they contact me and like, I need this, okay, let me see what I can do to help you, help connect you from point A to point B, so that we're able to help take some of that stress away from them.
Part 2 of our interview with Carol Tatom premieres May 9th. Provided here are some additional resources related to autism and the challenges related to it, as Carol spoke about today. For those listening to the audio version of this podcast, you can find those links in the description below.